Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our discussions, our conversations, and our journeys with respect to the feature films of that brilliant, one-of-a-kind filmmaker, artist extraordinaire, who is none other than Mr. David Cronenberg. And that brings us to a work which is described as being from the year 1983. It is a work which has a cast, a really brilliant cast, included in which are Deborah Harry and James Woods. And I'm speaking, of course, of this work, which is Videodrome. And for purposes of today, I'd like to focus this video on a general impressions or general comments about this film, especially in a non-spoiler context for the benefit in particular of those who have not yet seen this film, Videodrome. And then in a separate video, I'd like to have a more plot spoiler-specific discussion about this extraordinary work of art from David Cronenberg, that is Videodrome. Incidentally, this is the Blu-ray that can be found in Japan, the Japanese Blu-ray. This film is also made available, I understand, through other labels, through other means, such as, for example, the Criterion Collection. So just in case you're interested, there are other means to be able to watch this film, Videodrome. And it is very, I would say, vital. It is very enigmatic. It is chock full of concepts. This is a concept-rich film from David Cronenberg, whose body of work is already concept-rich as it is. But this is concept-rich to the max, I would say. And on top of that, or in parallel to that, this is a film that also has so many special effect sequences that are intriguing, that are quite disturbing, that are challenging, that are very intense and very graphic in a lot of places. And they have suggestions of mutilation and transformation, and also bodily harm and damage, as well as connotations of the sexual realm and bodily organs that seem to be suggested or mutated or somehow transformed in a way that goes beyond, in an extraordinary way, the quote-unquote normal concept of reality, perception, and human existence. So this is a film, again, that is so packed to the brim with the Cronenberg aesthetic and concept that it is a truly masterpiece of the Cronenberg aesthetic design and cinematic experience. In that way, it is so important in the context of the Cronenberg canon, the Cronenberg filmography. And it is a film that is so rich that it really almost commands or deserves not just one watch, but many watches, because it is that complex and that challenging, I would say. And it is so brilliant for it in many ways. And what do we have here? We have, again, in a very general discussion context, we have a film that involves, when we're talking about these concepts, for example, we have, as per the Cronenberg aesthetic that we have, I think, recognized thus far, one such concept is the examination or dealing with the notion of transformation and evolution and transhumanism. And this is set forth, for example, in the storyline of the transformation of the human body that is affected by some kind of advent of technology. And so we have here in this film, much like in some earlier Cronenberg works like, say, Scanners, we have here in Videodrome the concept of technology, some kind of advancement in technology. Here in Videodrome, it's the concept of broadcast waves, signals, television, that kind of technology, and the way in which images are transmitted in these electricity-based signals, or these radio signals, and how this, or satellite signals, and how these aspects of, say, science and technology, some of which could be cited as being natural, some of it could be cited as being artificial. This type of technology or the advent of technology affects the human condition and the human existence, and indeed affects it in some fundamental ways. One such fundamental way is the physical. And the other such fundamental way is through the perception and the sensory. So the first such fundamental way, the physical, is the idea of signals or radiation or some kind of broadcast, or the concept of the technology itself having an effect on the human body, the physicality of the human body, whether that being some kind of growth or mutation or tumor, or whatever the case may be. And so this can be recognized as being one of two things, right? It could be recognized as being a negative effect, that is the decay and destruction and decomposition of the human body, or it could be a positive effect, namely the discarding of quote-unquote old flesh in favor of the new flesh, because this is the natural process of the evolutionary progress. And the progression forward. In order to advance to the next stage, one must discard the clothing and the shell of the old stage, and thus leads to some very fascinating concepts of, again, the state of transhumanism and evolution in the context of changes in the human body, physicality, the corporeal. And then there's the other fundamental concept, I would say, which is how this advent of technology affects the human condition and perception in terms of sensory experience. And so this is something where we see the idea of a type of perceptions that are quote unquote skewed, a type of reality that seems to be confused, a subjectivity that's suggesting maybe things that we are seeing might or might not necessarily be actual representations of what is the reality of the situation of the moment. And this idea of sensory perception being affected also has its feet firmly planted in the realm of, or the conversation of, the transhumanism and the idea of the track of the human evolution. Because in the concept of Videodrome, this is one of the again, we're trying to be very general here. This is one of the key core concepts, which is how this notion of sensory perception and changes and adaptations of sensory perception is indeed one of the keys that certain characters in Videodrome identify or recognize as being the means by which this could lead to some kind of a change in human society that might be some kind of utopian ideal. That is one way of looking at it. However, again, with other concepts of a Cronenbergian nature, we also have how this idea of human evolution can be thwarted and can be perverted and can be abused in a way so as to lead to yet another concept of Cronenberg evolution, that is the social-political revolution. And that social-political revolution takes many forms in Cronenberg's works, such as the underground movement or some kind of political activity that is aiming to destroy the old order in favor of the new order in some past Cronenberg films. Or in the case of Videodrome, where it could be said to be the application or the solidification, as it were, of a type of destructive nature of societal forces. In other words, the application of this evolutionary trend as exemplified in Videodrome, and the idea of the evolutionary trend expressing changes and skewed perspectives of sensory perception. How this is also applied or potentially applied in a way that it could be very destructive to society writ large, as a type of master plan or as a type of conspiracy that also links to concepts of organizational, conspiratorial threats to society, big brother types of concepts, the idea of the corporation that is also a very singular threat to a lot of what might be seen as being sort of structures of society, and thus the idea of the threat that is posed by such forces can also be linked to a type of skewed perception as to a righteous social morality, or the lack of such a righteous social morality, etc. So we have all these elements that seem to be suggestive in a progressive or regressive way of the idea of evolution, change, revolution. And that can be, again, in the context of social political change, or the use or abuse of corporate structures and powers, or it could be in the context of sensory perception, or it can be in the concept of human evolution and the physicality of the body. And let's go in this route too, because the physicality of the human body also involves sexuality, and sexuality is the means by which human beings relate to other human beings in both a physical way and also in a psychological, mental, and emotional way. And this is due to say how this is essentially, sexuality is the very essence of interaction and coexistence, and how human beings react to one another in the form of, say, sexual attraction, sexual intercourse, and the like. Here in Videodrome, we also have this concept at play here, which is the use or abuse of concepts of sexual activity, sexual attraction, and how this is also reflective of certain views of, say, societal mores, and a sort of judgment on certain aspects of what is deemed to be moral or immoral activity in the realm of sexuality, such as it's discussed in this film when we're dealing with, say, softcore pornography aspects and the like that are part of the actual fabric of the story Videodrome. But this is also very important too, which leads back to an initial point about this discussion, namely, this is also formed in the context of television, or in the context of entertainment, or in the context of something that is broadcast. And this context of, or this idea or notion of something being broadcast, whether it be some kind of sexually explicit program, a pornographic program, or something very intense that has a type of sexual or sadomasochistic element to it, which goes to the core of the key concept, a story concept of the film Videodrome. This is also rooted in the form of the broadcast, of the television broadcast, or the broadcast recorded on videotape. And so what this means is it seems to be existing in this realm that is not truly physical, but it's existing in this realm of waves, of images, of pictures that are ethereal, that are somehow amorphous. And this is also very important too, because when we understand, or when we recognize that indeed we see so many aspects of Videodrome that are in this realm of the amorphous, we realize that this idea of the amorphous, and this idea of the ethereal, this idea of the unattainable in a way, is also perhaps one of the ways in which this film is showing us the evolutionary step from the corporeal and the physical to the hazy and to the ethereal. And that has, I think, with it very organic connotations with the idea of the advent of technology, both in a constructive and a destructive way on the idea of human existence, and also how this can be linked even in a religious connotation, how the idea of the corporeal leading to the ethereal. And also there's with that the idea too of martyrdom, and also self-sacrifice, as well as the idea of links to acts of violence and terrorism, which also comes full circle with the notion of socio-political revolutionary context in this film. Add to this mix the concepts of really unique and almost intriguingly out of this world concept design of, say, these images of the surreal, the way in which the body seems to be almost manipulated, things seem to be merging into flesh that seem, it's just, it has to be seen to be believed. I mean, there's some images of this film, and again, I don't want to go into too much detail, we'll save that for the next conversation, but suffice to say that there are some sequences or images in this film that are truly have to be seen to be believed type of shocking and overwhelming and indeed truly iconic moments in a David Cronenberg film. For these and other reasons, this film, Videodrome, is a one-of-a-kind concept film. It is also a science fiction film. It is also a horror film. It is also a film that is filled with a lot of very disturbing, violent imagery. But that violent, disturbing imagery also always has a purpose, has a point, has an objective. Namely, in I think a lot of the interpretations, the idea or the furtherance of these quote-unquote concepts of the Cronenberg aesthetic. And this embodiment of the Cronenberg aesthetic is, I think, shown in this film Videodrome to the max. To the max. Max Wren. And so this is a true treat, assault on the senses, a type of film that, again, must be seen to be believed. And when it is seen, it cannot be unseen. And I think those who are on their Cronenberg journeys, those who are examining and exploring the works of Cronenberg, this is one of the most important stops along the way of that Cronenberg journey, I would suggest. This is probably one of the most important films in Cronenberg's canon. It is certainly one of the most popular and perhaps in many ways controversial films in the Cronenberg canon. It is also a film that is so deep and rich and challenging and thought-provoking and dark and also quite disturbing indeed. And for these and other reasons, this is a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. And I'm referring to this film, which is Videodrome. Now, my dear friends, in the next video on this film, Videodrome, let us talk with some specific, plot-specific, spoiler-like discussions. So please join me in the next video on this discussion of Videodrome. But for those who have not yet seen Videodrome, once again, the works of Cronenberg, David Cronenberg, are very intense. They can be quite overwhelming in terms of the subject matter and the intensity and sort of the visceral quality of some of the shocking images that we see. And Videodrome is no exception to that. So if you have seen some Cronenberg films and that have this type of sensory perception, intensity to its imagery, let me put it that way, and I think Videodrome is certainly some place where I can strongly recommend that you can stop by along your Cronenberg journey. And this is one of the most important stops that you will make for those who are on the Cronenberg journey. Indeed, perhaps it can be argued that maybe this is, again, from certain perspectives, it could be argued that this could be the most important stop in the Cronenberg journey, because it's in many ways it's the ultimate embodiment of the Cronenberg aesthetic, in many senses of that expression. So, if you are on a Cronenberg journey, dare I say it, you must stop here. And again, for others, if Cronenberg's films aren't for you, then of course you don't have to watch this film, because again, I understand this film certainly isn't for everyone. But as I say, for those who are on a Cronenberg journey, and if you are enjoying your Cronenberg journey, then I say you have to stop here and you have to sit down and watch this epic masterpiece, which is Videodrome. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. So again, in the future video on this, which I hope will be very soon, we will talk with specificity about this work. But until then, my dear friends, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. So until the next one, my dear friends, thank you and cheers.